I'm honestly at the point where I feel like millennials, we simply just cannot have anything. From being told if we would go to university that we would obtain mid-level jobs and be able to climb up the corporate ladder, only to find ourselves starting at the very bottom rung, underneath a 21-year-old high school dropout who has more experience than you. Getting ourselves into huge student loan debts that we will probably never be able to pay off within our lifetimes. Being told that if we work hard and save enough, we might just be able to afford a house, only for the housing crisis to be the worst that it has ever been. With rent going up and wages staying exactly the same. Oh, and if you want to have something to eat in today's economy, girl, please make sure that you have at least £500 in your bank account, because you simply are not going to get a week's worth of shopping with anything less. The rumor that millennials are somehow terminally young in the brain honestly feels as if it could possibly be true. Because I mean, let's be honest, we all simply just want to go back to a time where it was really chill and we were really relaxed and we had no responsibilities and we were kids. And we were just taking part in the simple joys of watching our favorite TV shows like Zoe 101, Victorious, iCarly, SpongeBob SquarePants, Ren and Stimpy, when being an adult was the furthest thing from our imagination. When eating cereal for dinner was a choice. But no, we can't even take the simple joys and the simple pleasures of what is and what was the Nickelodeon generation. Because Dan Schneider and his merry band of PDF files have made it impossible for us to literally enjoy the things that we grew up with. And it's just, honestly, it's like we can't have anything good. And I'm just so frustrated. We have been through enough. We have been through a pandemic and we can't have anything good. Now, originally, I wasn't going to be covering the Dan Schneider story because, to be honest, it just makes me so sad. Not just for my instantaneous loss of nostalgia, but just for everybody who was affected by what took place behind the walls of Nickelodeon. So when I saw on social media that Quiet on Set was trending and everybody was talking about it, I did have a look around for it, but I couldn't find it because in the United Kingdom, it has not been released. I even checked my Discovery Plus account and tried to use a VPN, girl, and they have it blocked. They're saying if you are not from the US, you do not get to see the show. So I was just going to do the good girl thing and wait until the docuseries was available for me in the United Kingdom for me to finally watch it. However, I hopped onto Twitter and I was really surprised by what I was seeing. That Drake Bell, infamously known as one half of the Drake and Josh duo from the Nickelodeon sitcom, was all of a sudden being hailed as a victim, but not only a victim, that some of his past transgressions were suddenly being wiped. People were literally alleging that things that were said did not happen. Allegations that were made about sexual assault, domestic violence, and crime against minors were suddenly being touted online as lies. And I couldn't understand. Whilst I had never covered Drake Bell before, I was extremely confused. Was everything I knew about Drake Bell up until this point a complete and utter fabricated lie? So you know me, girl, I had to put on the glasses again, sweetheart, and get into my Agatha Christie gig. Because I may be many things, but a detective is not one of them. I am more like a crazy person who is like a dog with a bone. So I just started researching on the internet, and this is what my findings are.
Oh, yeah.
Hi guys, what is up, what is good, what is Gucci? It is your girl Paige Christie here, bringing you yet another video. Now, today's video is just going to be a little bit different to what it is that I usually do. Is it though? I say that every video, but is it really? Because it's like, it's the same shit that I usually do. But it's a different story, and I'm saying it differently, and it's a different day, girl, shush. But today I wanted to talk about Drake Bell, who is a part of the Quiet on Set documentary. Now, this is not going to be about Quiet on Set itself, the allegations surrounding it, who was involved, all of that kind of stuff. There is a lot of nitty-gritty stuff that's taken place there, and quite frankly, I feel like the people who have produced this docuseries are doing a tremendous job job of basically speaking on something that has been spoken about for such a long time on YouTube. I feel like this is one of the very few moments where YouTubers and YouTuber investigators, as well as commentary channels, have really spearheaded and pioneered the fact that these voices needed to be heard, to the point that it was finally covered by mainstream media. And I think that's amazing. I think this is tremendous good work from the community as a whole. However, one thing that just didn't sit right with me as an advocate for victims, just in general, especially CSA victims, is that a lot of the allegations that were surrounding Drake Bell have kind of disappeared. People are now having him be the place of a victim and a victim only. Now, let me preface this video by saying this is in no way me sitting here trying to invalidate the fact that Drake Bell is a victim. I think we all heard and saw the documents pertaining to the horrendous things it is that Drake Bell had to endure in his childhood, and I would not wish that on my worst enemy. That sounds like pure hell, not even having the ability to be able to escape your abuser, because they had integrated themselves so deep into your life that you literally had nowhere else to turn. So let me just say from the jump that I understand his stance as a victim. This is so incredibly sad. However, there are some huge allegations pertaining to Drake Bell that for some reason people just aren't acknowledging or refusing to acknowledge, wiping things from the internet that pertain to this knowledge, and some people just flat out saying that Drake Bell was lied on and that everything that was said was completely untrue.
Based on what? I hear you hark in the distance.
Based on what Drake Bell has told people took place, and not actually what the victim or anybody else surrounding the case has actually said. Now, just to give you guys a brief TLDR of what it is that I am talking about, back in 2021, Drake Bell ended up getting charged with 2 crimes in which he took a plea deal for. These crimes were attempted endangering of children and disseminating matter harmful to juveniles. And this ended up being a pretty decently big court case that people were talking about back in 2021, as the hearing for this sentencing was done via Zoom, and a lot of people got to hear from the alleged victim themselves exactly what she alleges took place between herself as well as Drake Bell from a first-person perspective. Back in 2021, a lot of people empathized with the alleged victim's recollection of her own personal events. And many condemned Drake Bell, not just for things it is that they may believe from the victim, but also for the crimes it is that he admitted to committing. So for me personally, I kind of felt that we had already kind of grown this rapport and general consensus that Drake Bell may not be the best guy and has done some kind of crazy things. But now, however, in 2024, I'm being told that this is completely fabricated. It was a complete non-story. It was a lie. And that to many people, this entire thing should be completely disregarded. And that Drake Bell is a victim only. Now, for me personally, I quite resent that idea, because it is not wholly uncommon for the victim of a CSA crime to become the perpetrator of a CSA crime. For instance, other perpetrators of sex crimes, such as R. Kelly, here in this Business Insider article, we have R. Kelly's attorney says that the musical genius doesn't deserve 25 years in prison for his crimes because he was sexually abused as a child. Turns out that R. Kelly was sexually abused as a child by his own sister. So we're talking like incest. And whilst again, yes, this is awful, this is terrible, I would not wish this on my worst enemy, and goodness gracious, I am so sad that you had to endure this. It doesn't mean that he could also continue to perpetrate sex crimes against women. So with this in mind, I went on this whole investigation journey to find out if everything that I was told, if everything that I was aware of when it came to Drake Bell was a complete fabrication and a lie. But before we figure out what it is that I found out on this journey, first a word from today's sponsor. Today's video is proudly sponsored by Midas Merge. Midas Merge is a really unique mobile game in which you can discover new lands, new territories, by discovering and nurturing the most cutest creatures and gardens. And just like the name would suggest, this game is all about merging. It's about merging things into even bigger things. For instance, you can combine various cute creatures into big super mega creatures. And these creatures become your happy little helpers, if you will, as they go around the garden and basically eat fruit and poop sunshine. It sounds crazy, but when I was actually playing the game, I was like, why are these little pieces of sunshine showing up everywhere? No, they're literally pooping sunshine. And if that is not the cutest thing that you've ever heard in your whole entire life, I don't know what to tell you. Currently, right now, I am at level 7 and struggling to get to level 8, as I have literally been playing this game every waking moment that I can, even on the toilet. However, your girl, she does not poop sunshine. Midas Merge is completely free with no mandatory advertisements, and you can also play offline, meaning that you can play wherever you want. In the game, you will help King Midas and Queen Lyra as they go on a journey to restore the Gardens of Gold. You need to hatch new creatures and feed them magical items to create sunbursts and illuminate the land covered in shadow cast by Nyx, the goddess of night. To find out why Nyx, the goddess of night, has decided to cast shadows on the Gardens of Gold. It is one of my favorite games right now. It is super duper relaxing. I always find myself coming back to it throughout various parts of the day because, to be honest, girl, it is extremely addicting. So if you are interested in this extremely addictive game, Midas Merge, please feel free to hit the link in the description box down below. Remember, it is free, so you have nothing to lose. And if you do use the link in the description box down below, also remember that that is directly supporting my channel and everything it is that I do here on YouTube. Or the other option is you can also use the QR code, which is over here. So download for free Midas Merge on the Apple App Store as well as Google Play. Thank you so much to Midas Merge for sponsoring today's video and supporting my channel. And without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Since its inception, Nickelodeon has been a beloved cornerstone of children's entertainment, providing generations with memorable characters and innovative programming. From Ren and Stimpy, SpongeBob, to Danny Phantom, to iCarly, Victorious, and Sam and Cat, it has been for many millennials like myself a safe space for imaginative exploration. However, in recent years, the once untarnished reputation of this iconic network has been completely shrouded in controversy, leading to the decline in its cultural influence and audience trust. I mean, let's face it, for so many years we have seen on social media so many different content creators speak about Dan Schneider and his involvement with Nickelodeon. From Deep Dive to Sloan to BJ Investigates and a plethora of other individuals, a lot of people have been speaking about Dan Schneider's weird behavior when it comes to his casting couch style of employment for minors, in the nicest way I could possibly put that. However, a couple of weeks ago, a documentary by the name of Quiet on Set became huge news, talking about Dan Schneider and his involvement with Nickelodeon, but also talking about all of the other grievous things that have taken place within the walls of the Nickelodeon studios. From contentious casting decisions to allegations of inappropriate content, Nickelodeon's journey from a beacon of childhood innocence to a battleground of controversy serves as a cautionary tale to the challenges faced by many people who try and attempt to enter into the entertainment industry. I mean, the documentary was wild, and the allegations were even wilder. But the biggest perpetrator of crimes that we could actually pin down wasn't in fact Dan Schneider. Surprisingly enough, the man who was the main focus for so many other channels who had been speaking about this prior to it making its way to mainstream media was probably one of the lesser controversial ones. For instance, it was insinuated that Dan Schneider's heavy involvement in Amanda Bynes' life could have potentially seen the downfall it is that we've all kind of witnessed here on social media of Amanda Bynes' personal mental health. But beyond that, without concrete facts to pin down, he was not the worst perpetrator. There was in fact so many other things that were taking place. For instance, there there was multiple different individuals who were charged with sex crime offenses against children. We are talking numerous PDF files who were literally there within a 3-year period, seeing that numerous kids, from seasoned regulars to even people who were just extras and around certain time periods, unfortunately facing CSA at the hands of these horrible individuals. One of the biggest perpetrators of these CSA crimes was a person by the name of Brian Peck. Now, Brian Peck used to work on The Amanda Show, and that was where he was able to develop a relationship with another cast member by the name of Drake Bell. And to make a long story short, essentially what happened was he was able to weasel his way into Drake Bell's life, make him essentially untrust his father and stop his father, who at several points was extremely concerned for Drake's well-being, by making Drake believe that his father was squandering his money, leading to Drake's mother taking the reins over his career. But with little knowledge of the industry, as their relationship to the industry was developed between Drake and his father, she didn't really know how to adequately protect Drake. So on several occasions, she allowed the seasoned professional Brian Peck to take control of whatever it was that Drake was doing, from taking him to casting events and taking him to and from work from his position as Drake in the show Drake and Josh, which saw Drake at numerous times, from his recollection of events, going back to Brian Peck's home and being unfortunately molested by him. Now, at this point in Drake's life, Drake is a young teenage boy. He is extremely vulnerable, with no parental figures nearby or anywhere at all, rendering himself completely helpless in a situation like that in regards to unwanted touch from adults, who quite frankly should know better. After a while of these attacks happening quite frequently to Drake Bell, he sought the solace, if you will, of his girlfriend's house, who he was dating at the time, and tried to spend as much time there so he wouldn't have to be around Brian Peck. His girlfriend's mum at the time clicked on that something wasn't quite right with Drake and managed to kind of spearhead this ball moving of Drake finally telling people what it was that he was enduring in terms of CSA. His mom instantaneously, as soon as she found out, contacted the police. They were able to get a recorded admission from Mr. Brian Peck, and the whole thing went to trial with Drake's name redacted, and Brian Peck was charged for his sex crimes. He did not get nearly half as much punishment as I believe that he should have for the crimes it is that he conducted. However, he did have to answer to the justice system. This was further amplified by the fact that Brian Peck, a person who had huge amounts of influence in Hollywood at that time, had numerous individuals backing him and writing some character reference letters for the judge to say how great this person's character was. Despite the crimes that Brian essentially at that point was accused of, and many of them of which he would eventually be charged for. Now, why is this relevant? Well, it's relevant because it's important to know that Drake Bell is a victim. He's a victim of CSA, and the things it is that he's had to endure is absolutely unfathomable to many people. And this documentary being the first moment that Drake Bell has ever had the opportunity to sit down and truly tell the world what has taken place with him from a place of healing, really resonated with so many people, especially people who also have been victims of CSA. We all know those feelings. We all registered the feelings it was that Drake was exhibiting when he was speaking to the camera. But Drake Bell isn't just a victim. He is also a perpetrator. And I say this because he has, in fact, pled guilty to dissemination of harmful materials to juveniles, as well as attempted child endangerment. And those are the crimes of which he has pled guilty to, not the crimes of which he has been accused of. Now, this is not completely unfathomable or uncommon, because it's also said that approximately 1/3 of individuals who were abused in childhood will become abusers themselves themselves, according to a study funded by the National Institute of Justice. About 40% of children who are abused will go on to abuse others later in life, as documented by a study published in Psychological Medicine, and around 60% of people in drug rehabilitation centers report being abused or neglected as a child, according to studies funded by the National Institutes of Health. I say all of this to say that Drake Bell, for me, is just a symbol of what a statistic is. Drake Bell has already spoken about his issues with substance abuse, him subsequently having to attend rehab in order to regain power of his life again. He is the victim of childhood CSA and has admitted to crimes against children. So it was quite baffling to me after hearing Drake's story that nobody was on the same wavelength as me of, oh my God, this is a symptom of such a huge problem. This system of abuse, this systemic abuse, it needs to stop, it needs to end. But it wasn't until I watched a documentary that I actually realized that the reason that people were so unaware of this was because it was practically glazed over in the entire docuseries. The documentary Quiet on Set, which spans over 4 episodes, all 42 minutes each, literally glazed over any of the offenses it was that Drake Bell was involved in. In episode 4, 36 minutes in, is when they actually start talking about Drake Bell's case. And in that same episode, at 37 minutes 40, is when they actually stop talking about the case. Meaning that the episode had dedicated less than 2 minutes to discuss his own personal, a 2.8-hour docuseries. And yes, whilst the primary focus of Quiet on Set was to do with the adult perpetrators at Nickelodeon, do you not think that this was kind of important information for the audience to know? Like, for the non-terminally online individuals who may not be aware of everything that took place with Drake Bell, is it not important to note that he also has crimes against children attached to his own name? And with how blasé Drake spoke about the entire ordeal, I was kind of feeling a little bit gaslit into thinking, was I misremembering what took place? Have I lost the plot?
I was lost.
Former Nickelodeon star Drake Bell was convicted and sentenced for child endangerment.
I took responsibility for that. I did what was asked of me, but the media grabbed a hold of so much misinformation, and it absolutely destroyed me. And I started to spin out of control.
So then I hopped onto YouTube and I searched for anything it is that I could find that pertains to Drake Bell and this particular case. Now, a forewarning, this case is a sealed case. There is no information that you can find about this case online. Hence why a lot of the allegations surrounding Drake were so difficult to pin down. So I had to look around, what were people saying about Drake as it pertains to this case?
You guys, Drake Bell did not essay any minors. It's like actually real life irking my nerves that you guys are leaving comment after comment after comment, and you're loud and wrong. So for those of you who were saying that we shouldn't care about Drake Bell's abuse because you think that he essayed minors, let's get some facts straight. Number 1, he pled guilty to child endangerment, okay? That is not the same thing as essay. That was him taking responsibility for his part in having a conversation with this girl who lied about her age. This was proven in court. They did a 2-year-long investigation. They seized both Drake's phone and the girl's phone, went through it and everything, found out that she was lying about the majority of the things that she claimed happened. He's never met up with anybody. And not only this, did you know that the whole thing about Mexico was a lie? He never moved to Mexico. He never went to Mexico. This girl was a fan that was stalking him, following him to all of his performances and his concerts. And let me get one thing straight. I am somebody who always sides with the women in these situations. But what we can't do is ignore the actual facts of the case. And these are the actual facts, guys. Like, you really need to stop spreading misinformation. Drake has been through enough, and we at least owe it to him as human beings to not continuously spread lies.
So you can imagine my absolute surprise that this is what people were saying online, and it was so heavy from every corner of social media, from Twitter to TikTok to Instagram, anywhere where people were discussing this. People were going out of their way to dispel the lies against Drake Bell. So I went in search of facts. What were the facts surrounding Drake Bell's case? And where on earth did this content content creator get all of this information from? So as I said before, the Drake Bell case is sealed. You can't access it, I can't access it, we can't access any information as it pertains to that case. All we have is the court hearing that was posted by Law and Crime Trials on YouTube. Now, just to give you a TLDR recap of what it is that Drake Bell alleges took place, was that he was talking to somebody online, they exchanged inappropriate messages with each other. As soon as he found out the person's age, he instantaneously stopped talking to her, and she became a crazed, weird, rabid fan surrounding him, harassed him and his wife and would not leave them alone. This ended up taking a legal turn in which he says that she lied about everything, but he admitted to the crimes just so that the whole ordeal would be over for him, so he could continue his life. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to kind of think to themselves, if there was no evidence to support any of the claims, why would you admit to some, if any at all? If that was me, I would want the whole world to know that the person who had been speaking on me in such a horrible way was a complete and total liar. I mean, we can't say that justice can't be served for men in the courtroom, because all we have to do is look at the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case. However, the unnamed teenage girl has a completely different recollection of events. She insists that they hung out, that she met him, that he digitally penetrated her, and that he also had her perform fellatio on 2 different occasions. Now, the problem is that these in-person encounters could not be corroborated with evidence. There was no R-word kit that was done for the young lady, and considering the young lady alleges that the crimes took place between the ages of 12 to 15 years old, being 19 years old at this present trial and being 17 years old when she reported the crimes, there would have been no way to have been able to obtain a DNA sample that would have been of any use by that point. So unfortunately, some of the things it is that the young girl had stated in her trial were completely disregarded because they couldn't be qualified, and that's just the judicial system. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it is. If you don't have the evidence to support the claims, then they can't really go to trial. So in this moment, this is just simply a hearing. They are going to be asking Drake Bell if he is going to accept his plea for the crimes of attempted child endangerment and disseminating harmful materials to juveniles. But the young lady decided to take this opportunity to speak via Zoom directly herself to Drake and speak to everybody in the courtroom and let them know the kind of person that she believes Drake Bell to be. These are her words. I'm not going to speak for her, and I will let you make your own decision.
Thank you, Your Honor. The victim is present today via Zoom. It's my understanding that she has prepared some statements for the court. And importantly, those statements will concern the defendant's conduct, but specifically and most importantly, the harm caused and that she has suffered as a result of his actions. Your Honor, what I can tell you at this point is that the victim in this case has been severely impacted and harmed by this defendant and his actions, a man and someone that she idolized and looked up to for years. Your Honor, what we are asking, the state of Ohio is asking today, is that you listen to her, take her statements into consideration when you order your sentence, as she talks to you about this defendant, his actions, and the harm caused, and impose a fair, just, and appropriate sentence that does not demean his conduct or the seriousness or the harm caused to the victim. And I believe the victim at this point has prepared some statements, so I would ask the court to direct their attention to the victim.
Okay, so from the jump, the first thing it is that I want to mention is that they are describing the young lady as the victim. So there's no question as to whether Drake Bell has victims, because in a court of law, the lawyers themselves were reporting the individual, the young lady, to be a victim. She's about to tell her story to the courtroom because this is her final time to say anything at all.
Ma'am, this is Judge McCormick. Do you wish to address the court and the defendant in this matter?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to read my statement to you. I chose to write the statement. Sorry?
Let me interrupt for a second. I'm going to ask that you not show her picture, please.
So if you guys didn't clock that, from the beginning of the trial, the judge has asked for them not to show her picture. Now you're asking yourself, why? Why can't we see the young lady? It's because he believes the young lady to still be a minor. Now, if that does not put into your head like the gravity of the situation, then I really don't know what will. The judge was concerned that he was showing the minor as she was speaking. But the reality is that this young lady was 19 now, and she was a minor when the offences allegedly took place. But she visually represented to the judge immediately that she looked like a person who was underage. I'll let that stick in your noggin when you think about how he was having a conversation with somebody who at the time was far younger than what she looks and represents right now.
She's a minor. Oh, but no, go ahead, ma'am.
I chose to write this statement because I want justice to be served more than anything. The only time that the defendant has appeared in court in person was on June 3rd for his arraignment, which was before the media found out about this case. He has appeared in court today over Zoom instead of appearing in person. This doesn't surprise me and shows what a coward he is, but I am not a coward. And that is why I'm going to reveal all of the details of the crimes that he committed against me. Aside from Cleveland, the only other time that the defendant sexually assaulted me was in October of 2017. It happened in Illinois in the middle of the night. He digitally penetrated me in the back seat of my aunt's car while she was driving him to a friend's house. The Illinois police only agreed to move forward with that case if the Ohio police did not pursue this case. I don't understand why, regardless of their reasons why, he has gotten away with sexually assaulting me in Illinois. So today, I will be discussing the details of the crimes that he has pleaded guilty to and the impact that they have had on me. But before I do that, I would like to provide you with some context on my relationship with the defendant and what led up to these crimes. This portion of my statement explains how he started grooming me when I was 12 years old. I started off as a fan of him. I was definitely one of his biggest fans. Everyone who knew me as a child knew that he was a hero to me. I would have done anything for him. When I was 11, I learned that my aunt had a mutual friend who knew the defendant. That led to my aunt taking me to meet him for the first time in 2014 when I was 12. I adored him, and he instantly made me feel that he adored me right back. From the time I was 12 to 15, my aunt took me to meet him and spend time with him many times. After I met him for the first time, he started speaking to me more frequently online. I confided in him about very personal things about myself, including my struggle with my mental health. I went to him for advice and for someone to lean on, and he gave me that. I felt protected and loved by him. When I was 13, I went to him for boy advice. He told me that I was beautiful and that boys were stupid. He then sent me a photo of myself that he had screen capped from my Instagram, telling me that I was, quote, such a cutie. I took and uploaded that photo online a year earlier when I was 12 years old. He saved that photo of me onto his phone. I didn't realize how disturbing that was until many years later. Another instance of creepy behavior happened when I was spending time with him at the age of 14. He told me that he couldn't believe how much I'd grown since he last saw me. He said that I wasn't little anymore, and I was, quote, a woman now. When I was 15, I noticed a huge shift regarding his treatment and attitude towards me. When I was younger, he was sweet and actually wanted to talk to me about my life. But at 15, he started sending me messages about how, quote, hot I was. In the summer of 2017, I messaged him, telling him that I was going to see him in concert in the following months. He replied by telling me that he couldn't wait to see me. He also asked me, quote, how old are you now? I told him 15. He then told me to, quote, hurry up. Don't smile at me. Not too long after that, his messages to me became blatantly sexual. This eventually led to many months of inappropriate messages and photos being exchanged over Instagram and Snapchat. The photos exchanged included photos of my body and photos of his body and his genitals. In the beginning, I was excited. I thought that he really liked me and I thought that I meant something to him, but that didn't last. Back then, the last thing I wanted was to lose him, not only because I was completely infatuated with him, but because I became scared of him. There were times where I felt really uncomfortable talking to him in such graphic sexual ways and wanted to be left alone, but I had a very hard time telling him that because I was terrified of upsetting him, so I would make excuses. When I did, quote, upset him, he made me cry. If I didn't give him what he wanted, he was spiteful. It made me feel guilty. He made me feel disgusting and absolutely awful about myself. At that point, it was clear that he was the one who was in control. I felt trapped and stuck because I still idolized him. He had me wrapped around his finger. This caused a tremendous amount of stress and shame. Crimes that he committed against me in Cleveland. I want to make something very clear. The reason that these particular incidents did not result any further than oral sex was because the defendant knew that I was menstruating at the time. Had I not been menstruating then, he would have raped me. Don't look at me like that, because he would tell me how badly he wanted to penetrate me vaginally, but use much more vulgar language. On December 1st, 2017, my aunt took me to the Odeon Concert Club to watch him perform. That night, the defendant took me backstage to be alone with him.
Okay, so this is already quite heavy. Yeah, so I apologize apologize if this is quite triggering for other people, but what I will say is you will notice through various points in this statement where she, snaps and says, don't look at me or don't look at me like that. It's because she is able to see Drake Bell's face throughout this whole ordeal. And in a short while, I will show you from Drake's camera what that looked like for her. And I want you to, mentally assess what you think could possibly be going on there, because I got a very icky feeling seeing what she was seeing. But let's continue.
Started kissing me, and the night ended in him having me perform oral sex on him twice. The next incident happened on December 2nd, 2017. While I was alone with him in his hotel room, he had talked to me about seeing me one last time before we all left Cleveland and went home. So we went to his hotel to say goodbye. In his hotel room, he started kissing me and had me perform oral sex on him again. My aunt was right outside the room waiting in the hallway while this was happening. She trusted him and never thought that he would ever do anything to hurt me. Now, I would like to bring up an individual who has...
Okay, can I just say, just from the jump, because I feel like it needs to be said, this aunt, oh my god. Like, if what is being alleged is actually true, this is fucking gross of the aunt to have done. And it will explain as to some of the conspiracies or some of the things it is that people are saying online in regards to, her lying about the entire situation. You will see why the aunt is kind of very much intrinsic to that thought process for a lot of people.
Known about these crimes for years. This person is the defendant's partner, Janet Vaughn. In January of 2018, I was engaging in an inappropriate conversation with who I thought was the defendant, until I received a message back from the defendant's account claiming to be Janet. That was the first interaction I ever had with her. This confused and devastated me, and I begged the defendant for an explanation about that exchange with her. He brushed it off by repeatedly claiming that everything was fine. After these crimes happened, I tried to shake off all of the gross feelings that I had. Ignoring those feelings only made them worse. I felt so miserable, broken, and humiliated. I was struggling to sleep every night. The sexual messages continued for a while after that, until I eventually put a stop to them. I did that by confronting him about what he had done to me. I confronted him in September of 2018, just weeks before I had reported the Illinois and Ohio crimes to my local police. I chose to confront him about what he had done to me because I wanted to gain my power back. I had to suck up all of the fear that I felt in order to confront him. He ignored me for many days at first. Eventually, he tried apologizing to me for, quote, breaking my heart, but deleted those messages quickly afterward. His crimes are not heartbreaking or whatever other loose term he uses. They are disgusting. He didn't care then, and he doesn't care now. That makes me feel worthless. I confronted Janet as well. When I confronted her, she claimed that she didn't know anything about these crimes. She denied speaking with me in January of 2018 and claimed that wasn't her. She told me that none of this was my fault and apologized to me. She also told me that she wanted to, quote, jump in front of a car. However, at one point, she asked me to let her know when I was going to the police with this case for her own benefit. Of course, I did not do that. She knows what happened and she doesn't care. Janet is just one of the few people who have tried to protect him, and the others will now know exactly who they are. The pain that the defendant has caused me is indescribable, and it worsens every day. Being used by somebody who meant the world to me has left me feeling more hurt than I've ever been before. I am now 19 and my life hasn't been the same since I was 15. I think about these crimes every single day. I feel like I'm in a constant dark place. Sometimes I wish I could disappear so I can forget about what happened. Right after I reported him, my parents sent me to a therapist. So far, they have spent $7,620 in hopes that she can help me move forward from this. These crimes have especially impacted my relationship with my aunt. For a while, I could not fathom how my aunt had no idea what was going on, and that made me doubt the trust that I had in her. To this day, there is still tension and awkwardness between her and myself. Every time I speak to her and look at her, I think about the defendant and what he did to me. My relationship with my aunt will never be the same, and that breaks my heart. My whole family...
Honestly, it really shouldn't break her heart, because it's not up to her to continue like this relationship with her aunt. If anything, her aunt should be, the most apologetic person in the whole entire world and accommodating to her. So this is really, really sad to hear.
Family is hurting because I am hurting. Their trust in my aunt has been affected too. My aunt blames herself for leaving me alone with the defendant. My parents blame themselves for placing their trust in my aunt to protect me and keep me safe. It's awful to hear them say that. Every night, I dread going to sleep because I don't want to see him in my nightmares. I have lost many nights of sleep because of this. I've lost count over how many times I fell asleep in class when I was in high school due to so many sleepless nights. I also occasionally had to leave school early due to having panic attacks that were triggered by these incidents. During these panic attacks, I would struggle to breathe, sweat, shake, cry, and often faint. When I do sleep and do see him in my nightmares, it throws off my entire day. I'm sorry. These crimes have affected my dating life as well. Every date I have since gone on has ended with me going home crying. Every time I feel the slightest bit vulnerable around a guy, all I can think of and see is the defendant. I have serious trust issues because of him. Dating your teenagers should be a fun experience and should not be something that brings up trauma caused by a grown man. The defendant's crimes against me are the worst things that he could have ever done to me. He was such a huge part of my childhood, and in return, he ruined my life. Back when I confronted him, he told me that he didn't want me to hate him. I don't hate him. I loathe him. Now I would like to ask you something important. Whether a person has a lot of influence, some or none at all, these are crimes that are unforgivable and inexcusable. They can never be taken back. He was calculating. He preyed on me and sexually abused me. He is a monster and a danger to children. I am kindly asking you to send a powerful message that these crimes are never okay, no matter who a person is. I also want to bring up the letter that I wrote to you. In my letter, I explain why the defendant is not remorseful for his crimes. I described how he has publicly found humor in them and how he has used tactics to gain sympathy from the public. He could have easily ignored the people online who were mocking this case. Instead, he went out of his way to let them know that he thinks it's funny, and he can give me that look all he wants. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. The crimes that he committed against me are some kind of sick joke to him. My suffering is not for him to laugh at or his leverage to brag about becoming a good man now that he is a father. So today, if the defendant tries to tell you that he is remorseful, I am asking you to appreciate that actions speak louder than words. Since his arraignment and plea hearing, his actions have been loud and clear, and they have shown that he simply does not care and does not have an ounce of remorse. I won't be surprised if he tries to manipulate everybody into believing that he's changed, but he can't fool me. If he is truly sorry for anything.
Oof, I'm finding this extremely difficult to listen to. I've heard it already. This is horrendous, but I felt like it was really important for you guys to hear this because there's already People Magazine have already typed out a huge transcript. I could have sat down and read the entire transcript to you, but I don't think I'm ever going to put the justice into what is being said here. I felt like it needed to come from the alleged victim themselves. So I'm sorry if this is triggering. I'm finding it triggering myself, but we're going to get through it together.
He is sorry that he has finally been caught. I can assure you of that. He committed these crimes against me with pride. A defendant who clearly feels no remorse for his crimes deserves to be given the maximum sentence possible. I will never forget what he did to me. I idolized and looked up to him, and he took that and broke it in the most sickening way possible. He is the epitome of evil. I deserved better than to be used for his sick desires and for my suffering to be used for his amusement. Jared Drake Bell is a pedophile, and that is his legacy. Thank you, Your Honor.
So basically, again, this is just a hearing. He's going to plead guilty. We already know what he's pleading guilty to. Dissemination of harmful material to juveniles, as well as attempted child endangerment. That is all that they can essentially give him at this moment in a plea deal without this going to trial. This is why the whole, like, she lied at trial. It never went to trial. I don't know why you're saying she lied at trial when it never went to trial. This is a hearing. This is a hearing where he literally just has to sit down and, hear the statements. He's going to say, do you accept the terms of this plea? He's going to say yes, and that's the end of it. And I cannot express how much I commend this young lady for standing up and saying what she needs to say, in spite of knowing that regardless of everything that she says, he's gonna take the plea. There was no rhyme or reason to say this unless it was just to say it so that the world hears and so that she knows and he knows exactly what took place. This is extremely powerful, and I, from my CSA situation, only wish that I was half as strong as this young lady was at 19 years old. Wow, So for me personally, like, I just don't know how people heard that and was like, victim blaming. That's the part that's wild. Oh, she was a crazy stalker fan. Maybe she was. I'm not even going to fucking dispute that. That's a stupid thing for me to dispute. She was 12 to 15 years old. She's a kid. That's a child. And, okay, he messaged her, and as soon as he found out, how do you message a 12 to 15-year-old at any fucking point without realizing that that is a fucking child? That is a fucking child. 12 to 15? That's a child. Even if you were to disregard all of the other allegations of, digitally penetrating inside of a car, of fellatio on numerous occasions, even if you were to disregard those, it doesn't matter. What took place was fucking egregious and disgusting and bad and should not be glazed over in 1 minute and fucking 20 seconds of footage in a fucking documentary about predators within the entertainment industry. It is unfathomable that people just glazed past this. And it makes me so incredibly angry when I so desperately want the world to say that two things can be the same at the same time. He can be a victim of a horrendous crime, but he can also be the perpetrator of horrendous crimes to other people. And we have seen it time and time again, like I mentioned with R. Kelly in the past. We have seen it where somebody who has come from a life of CSA goes on to do those said things. Yeah, we're supposed to forget about it all, to refocus somewhere else. Could you imagine being that young girl and watching the entire fucking world now go, poor fucking Drake? Do you know how that would feel? To sit down and watch this documentary and know that when it came to you, you were only worth 1 minute and 20 seconds. And I've got some conspiracy theories surrounding why it went in the way that it did, and I will talk about it a little bit later, but let's get through the rest of this. There's not much to say. That was her recollection of events. Then what happens is Drake's lawyer then comes forward and basically says we can't qualify any of the claims it is that she's making in this statement today. What we can do is accept the plea. Drake accepts the plea, and that's the end. But for just complete transparency, I want you guys to hear this for yourself. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what happened. I want you to see it with your own eyes. Because apparently people have seen and heard, but they feel like this is okay. It's not okay. It was never fucking okay.
Recognize and acknowledge the professionalism that was shown by my colleague Kevin Bringman and his supervisor Jennifer Driscoll in allowing us to really process this case over a long period of time. While the case seems that it went so quickly from arraignment to plea to sentencing, it's because the work was done on the front. And I do appreciate their working with us to effectuate that. There's no question that Drake has accepted his responsibility in this case by the way of his plea. He has pled to the felony of the 4th degree, attempted child endangerment, and a misdemeanor disseminating, neither of which require any sexual registration. The chat that was referred to by Prosecutor Bringman was the dissemination, and that did create a risk of harm to then minor, now adult. I think we're just going by initials, SG in this case. If not, it doesn't matter. Names, do you want victim or SG? Doesn't matter. I'll leave it to you. Victim. All right.
Okay, so you just heard that, right? He was trying to refer to the victim by SG, which I guess is her initials, and he asked the court if it was acceptable to call her SG, and the court basically turned around and said, no, you must refer to her as the victim. So don't turn around and say Drake Bell has no victims. The court said that this was a victim.
Prosecutors asked that I just refer to this person as victim, so I will do that for purposes of this hearing. Yeah, there have been a lot of claims that were made by the victim here, and it's not often, or can I even recall an instance where defense counsel at sentencing had to address the credibility of the victim's allegations at sentencing. But this appears to be that time. I will simply say this, some of these claims that were made about sending photos of genitals, we went through these claims with the prosecutor's office for a long time, approximately 18 months. No such image was presented, either to the state or to the defense. The claim that he is a pedophile lacks any sort of factual support from the case, and it also lacks any sort of mental health claim. It's an easy tag to give someone, but doesn't fit in this case. Clearly, the victim in this case, and again, it's difficult because it's hard for me to walk the very fine line in this case between what he did and what he's being accused of doing, that which he accepted responsibility for and that which he would never accept responsibility for.
Let me ask you, what is he accepting responsibility for?
So the
So if you didn't hear that, that was the judge saying, let me ask you, what is he accepting responsibility for?
So the responsibility, Your Honor, is for chats that occurred between he and the victim.
What was the subject matter of those chats?
The subject matter of those chats were there's a lot to it. So there was discussion.
So he goes, what were the subject matter of these chats? He goes, the subject of these chats were, and then he couldn't give a real reason. Why? Is it because they were sexual in nature? Is that hard to say?
Because they had known each other for years, and there were claims that became sexual in
She was a fucking child. They'd known each other for years. Who cares? She was a fucking child. She was a kid. Just a kid.
nature. When asked, however, at what point, or at your age, excuse me, at that point, he said, can you hurry up? Which shows a complete intent not to engage with a minor. So, however.
So remember when she said in her recollection of events that he had told her to hurry up at 15 years old because she wasn't of age yet? He said that that was an indication of his reluctance to engage with the minor. This is his defense attorney. So you know all of you who are spewing that same fucking rhetoric is the rhetoric of his defense attorney, which is doing what he's supposed to do. Fucking defend. I don't slight this guy for doing this job. Somebody has to do it. Everybody deserves equal representation. But don't sit there and spew this man's rhetoric when he's there to do that job. Defend. How in God's name did anybody watch this in any way and go have to take away, oh, but Drake, oh, poor Drake. No, girl, no. Victim and perpetrator, two can be the same.
Those chats, harmful as they were, clearly harmed this person at that time.
They were sexual in nature.
Those were, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so the judge reiterated that they were sexual in nature, and he said those were, at the time, yes. Did you hear that? Is it going through? Can you hear? Okay.
They certainly, however, Your Honor, did not mimic any of the factual scenarios that the victim has brought up here today. And again, I have to emphasize the fact that once the age was known, that terminated at that point, saying hurry up with the age. But I will say this.
Do you know like the mental gymnastics that this attorney is having to go through just to even justify what it is that we are hearing? Is anyone getting it? Is it clicking?
Yes, please.
You didn't know how old she was when he first started engaging in conversations with her, either at a concert or by telephone. He didn't know that her age.
At the start, he may not have known. He did learn.
This is what the judge said. So you're telling me that this man did not know the age of this person, the victim, at any point, even through telephone conversations. You're saying that he didn't know the age. He said at this point now. So even through telephone. So we're talking they must have spoken on the phone. Like, hello, hello. They spoke on the phone. You didn't know?
Of the age at a later time, Your Honor, and that is why he's accepting the plea. What's it? Yeah, during the chats, Your Honor. Kevin, you have the dates on the chat? The chats, correct? You agree? Yeah. So the state and defense would agree the age was mentioned during those chats, Your Honor. All right.
Okay, so it switched up now. Age was mentioned during those chats. He didn't know the age. Are we misremembering?
So, Your Honor, other than this offense for which he's pled guilty, this court is aware that there were two OVIs, but nothing ever similar to anything like this. We would ask for basic community-controlled sanction, which would then be transferred to California. That certainly would be sufficient pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 29, 29, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Because in this case, recidivism does not appear likely, and nor does the severity of it outweigh any similar offenses by similar offenders when we're looking at what was actually pled to in this case. The claim that seeing the therapist resulted from this, and again, this is where I'm just going to take this responsibility for making the record straight. I'm sure it's not going to be, the victim in this case is not going to like what I have to say, but we are aware that the therapy did not begin with Drake. This began before. Throughout this case, and this is why I think that the plea is very accurate and very fitting, and all parties agreed to.
Okay, so because she had therapy before the case, they're saying that they're not responsible for the therapy. I can understand from a judicial standpoint why they might think that. It doesn't mean that it hasn't heavily exasperated and now she's having more therapy than she ever has before. But either way, I can understand them using that as leverage. That makes sense. And she didn't deny, she nodded along when he said that.
Including the victim in this case, was aware of this before this day and approved of this plea. Clearly, she, according to a lot of the statements that were provided in this case, worshipped and kind of held herself out as a super fan of Mr. Bell. There were no claims at all of any sort of inappropriate conduct until the victim in this case learned of Mr. Bell's fiance, now wife. And at that point, that's when everything kind of turned the world upside down. In going through all of these statements and all the witnesses in this case, I will just simply, I'm trying to do this in as gentle a manner as possible, but there was certainly concern for the victim's reality in her case and in her claims thereafter. The claims as to Janet Bell and the exchange online that was happening, we had provided a video to the prosecutor's office from Miss Bell. She explained why she spoke to the victim the way that she did. She explained that she was just trying to appease her and trying to let her believe that she was just being heard because she had difficulty even talking to her about it. So this was not anything that, as the victim somehow believes now, was genuine by Miss Bell. This was an attempt just simply to diffuse the situation, which in hindsight.
Okay, so his girlfriend attempted to diffuse the situation, completely inappropriate. I don't know why this is even like a part of contention or something that is that the attorney wants to dispute in any capacity, because that's inappropriate, right? I feel like we would all agree that that's inappropriate. I would say that that was inappropriate.
They clearly judged correctly as a dangerous situation. I'm not sitting here today, Judge, to minimize the conduct of what Drake did. But what was accused here today, what was brought out here today, was a far other world from what we, the state and the defense, had contemplated prior to. Since the time of her allegation, when she claims that this happened, she went to 9 additional concerts that he was at. She would message him saying, "I miss you." You know, when we talk about the kind of different reality, I think one of the points that stood out most to me was in the victim's.
Okay, that whole idea that like, oh, the victim attended several of her concerts after the occasion took place. It's like, okay, yes, because as minors, we don't necessarily have the cognitive ability to be able to understand that what is taking place is in fact wrong. Hence why it took her until 17 years old to eventually put a stop to it and say, hold on, this is inappropriate and I'm going to speak my piece. They aren't cognitively aware when they're kids. It doesn't matter. She could have went to 50 fucking concerts. It really doesn't matter. She could be a crazed fucking psychopathic lunatic. It really doesn't matter. He shouldn't have been having inappropriate sexual in nature conversations with a minor. Period.
Videoed statement to the detective in this case from the Cleveland Police Department, Atanasio, when he asked her, "Has anyone come to speak to you on behalf of the defense?" And she said yes. And the detective said, "Who was that?" "Well, they're the private investigator for Mr. Bell." And we were, the prosecution, defense, were all in the same room. We heard that. And we knew perfectly well that that had never happened. And then all of a sudden she stated that, "Oh, you know what? Actually, I was wrong. I was confused. It didn't happen. It just seemed really realistic to me." And that showed great concern for credibility and recollection. She talks about the hotel room at the A-Loft. And I understand that she has problems with her aunt now, but it is important to show that there was another adult who was there. All of this was shared with the state and the defense. This is why we pled the way that we did to what was actually done, not what is actually being stated here today. And that friend was very clear, not just in a statement to the defense, but also in another recorded statement to the Cleveland Police Detective Atanasio. And that person stated that the victim had never gone into Mr. Bell's room alone, period. And that was twice stated to us and to the detective. She talks about performing oral sex here today on 2 occasions, stating that there was never, that this happened in the back room at the Odeon. We also were able to identify and share witnesses who indicated they had gone back and forth down the hall into that room throughout the night. The door was open. There were people in that room at all times, and this did not happen. She did tell one of her friends, and I'll get to some here in a moment, that she did report this when she did, because she did not, or she said that Mr. Bell did not respond to her liking. So in essence, what this is was a person who, and that's okay, idolized this person. His conduct was not correct. It was not proper for what he did. And unfortunately, he did not know who he was speaking with and the damage this was going to do. But I have to be very clear because it would not be fair to sit there and just accept everything that was said. What occurred, or what the victim is claiming to have occurred here, not only am I saying that it did not happen, not only would Mr. Bell say that that did not happen, but the evidence in the evidence in this case would suggest it did not happen. And again, we all know that this prosecutor's office would pursue child sex charges and go to great lengths and aggressively, as they should. And we've seen it many times. If they felt that that was a provable case, I'm sure we would not be talking here today about an attempted child endangerment and a disseminating matter harmful to a minor.
Okay, so basically, the minor did not have any kind of evidence to be able to support that essentially she had any in-person contact with Drake Bell. This is very common for CSA cases. It is not uncommon at all. If you do have evidence, they will pursue it to the umpteenth degree. Agreed. But if you don't have evidence, they won't. The other situation that's taken place is the fact that witness statements aren't following along. There were witness statements from the Odeon people who may have been hired by Drake Bell, who, were saying that this never took place or didn't take place as far as they were aware of their recollection of that same evening where she alleged that she had given him fellatio. And obviously, we also have the auntie as well, the auntie's involvement in it. Apparently, allegedly, this is what the streets are saying, so I can't say that this is based in fact, but the auntie may have also said that this never took place. But also, we have to remember that the auntie would be implicating herself to child endangerment case herself, because she was the adult in charge of looking after and maintaining this young lady's well-being, and that did not happen. So she could also be implicating herself. So it's not crazy or wild for me to think that that would be a reason as to why the auntie would not go along with this case and say, oh yeah, this is exactly what happened. Maybe the auntie is selfish and wants to save herself, So it looks like she just didn't have anything or anyone in her corner. It looks like she just wanted to say the statement so that the court could hear the statement in full of her recollection of events. But it seems as if it doesn't matter regardless. She accepted what his plea was going to be and that he took this plea. We also have to remember that this plea means that this doesn't have to go through trial and every single text message and stuff between him and this minor dragged up and because of his influence go through the press. But this also means that he doesn't have to register as a sex offender. His charges are attempted child endangerment and the dissemination of harmful material to juveniles. Those are the charges it is that he accepted. Some of these charges can be qualified as misdemeanors, but the dissemination of harmful material towards towards juveniles, that in of itself, that one is a child sex crime. It is qualified as a child sex crime. So when we are saying he's not, he's not a perpetrator of CSA, he admitted that, but just on a misdemeanor level. You know what I mean? So for me personally, this is just, it's kind of crazy that everybody's heard this and they're still going on with the narrative that this young lady had lied. What, because her evidence couldn't be supported in court? This is one of the few cases that have actually made its way into the judicial system when it comes to CSA. If we're not to believe someone because they don't have the evidence to support these allegations, that means that every single one of James Charles's alleged victims we shouldn't listen to, right? Because they could be lying, because it's not been proven. James Charles never pled guilty to any of these crimes, right? So we shouldn't believe them. In fact, we shouldn't believe any single person who said anything, even if it's a system of abuse. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, Paige, this is only one thing. It isn't a system of abuse. It isn't something that has happened over and over and over again. We will get into it, girl, because this isn't the only allegation. This is the only allegation that went to court. This is the only allegation in which there was a plea and it actually got to that judicial level. But there have been allegations for years pertaining to Drake Bell, which we will get into shortly. But let's just finish this real quick.
Now, as far as sanction, Your Honor, in asking for the basic community control sanction, I would submit that there's already a great penalty that has been paid by Mr. Bell that others would not face merely because of his position. As the court knows, online, if you just simply type in his name, the initial Google result will come up with 23.6 million results that deal with Drake Bell and this very process for which we're standing here today. So this is something that's going to tag him and follow him around. He's already seen a loss of employment because of this, because people have wondered, what is this all about? My hope is that will start up for him again when now they know what the reality of this actually is. Again, to go back to the just flip and claim that he's a pedophile, as the court is aware, we did engage professionals in this, and there is no such finding as was suggested here today. So Your Honor, I would submit that the basic community control sanction with the Interstate Compact of California is adequate. Lack of history justifies what we are requesting. The nature of the plea, the level of the offenses certainly supports that request as well. And if it would please the court, I would ask that Mr. Bell make a brief statement on his own behalf. And I would also let the court know that I've asked Mr. Bell to keep it brief because in my professional judgment, I cannot state that civil litigation will not follow this. And I feel that I would not be doing a service to my client if I didn't.
So that's him basically saying to Drake, keep it short, keep it brief, don't say much, because if you say too much, it can cause a bigger problem.
Suggest that. Now, yes, of course, there was a plea that can be used, but we're still talking about two very different things here today. So I thank the court for consideration.
Thank you, counsel. With respect to the potential civil litigation, he has pled to certain offenses which could expose him to civil liability. So in that regard, I would like to hear from the defendant as to what his position on this is and why this occurred. Mr. Bell, go ahead.
Your Honor, I just want to say today that I accept this plea because my conduct was wrong. I'm sorry that the victim was harmed in any way, but that was obviously not my intention. I have taken this matter very, very seriously. And again, I just want to apologize to her and anyone else who may have been affected by my actions.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Very good. Well, the court heard a lot of serious and disturbing allegations here today, but I can't lose focus on the fact as to what he pled to. He did not plead to sexual misconduct or engaging in sexual relations. He pled to attempted endangering children and disseminating matter harmful to juveniles. These are serious allegations, but they do not involve sexual relations. However, a grown man does not engage in inappropriate text messages to a teenager. There's a reason why a 14 or 15-year-old does not have the right to drive, does not have the right to vote, does not have the right to serve in the armed forces. They don't have the emotional or mental maturity to properly gauge their conduct. So
Can I just say, big up to this judge for seeing and cutting through the bullshit, because my goodness.
did take advantage in that regard to somebody who could not appreciate the consequences of the relationship or lack of relationship or inappropriate relationship. Now, I respect your attorney, and he talks about that your position has exacerbated the harm that befallen you because of all this publicity. But the fact of the matter is, your position and celebrity status enabled you to nurture this relationship. You were able to gain access to this child, and you were able to gain the trust of this child. So it's a two.
Fucking snaps for the judge for cutting through all the bullshit. Oh, his celebrity, he's suffered so much. It's like, no, dude, your celebrity is what gained you access to the child. He references the victim as a child because he sees that this is not okay. Like, regardless of, even if you want to disregard everything it is that the young lady has said about her experiences in person, even if you want to it's still not okay. This is fucking wild.
And sword your position. I hope you truly are remorseful. I don't know. You are going to get 1 year on the felony 4, 6 months on the misdemeanor. They'll run concurrent by operation of law. I will suspend the imposition of the sentence. You will be subject to 2 years community control sanctions. You'll have to register with Cuyahoga County. They will facilitate the transfer of probation to California. They will evaluate your sexual offender report that was submitted under seal. They will determine whether you have to undergo additional counseling. You will also perform 200 hours of community work service, and you are to have no contact with the victim, court costs imposed. Anything further, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
Very good.
Okay, so that's the court case. That's what took place in full. I'm not hiding anything. There is nothing to dispute or anything like that. Because essentially what we saw was a young lady give her story for 90% of it to be disregarded because it was, you know, him taking a plea that day. But obviously her having that empowered moment to be able to tell her story of how she was, you know, in the company of Drake Bell, that's what she alleges. That was completely disregarded, unfortunately, because there was no evidence to support that. So because of that, he took the plea deal. The plea deal was attempted child endangerment and dissemination of harmful material to juveniles. Those are the things it is that he pleaded to. We already heard in the case that the conversations that we're having were definitely sexual in nature. It was probably more than likely that this was a lot easier for him to take this plea rather than to have this all dragged out for everybody to hear, every sordid little detail in the conversation between himself and this minor. He accepted the terms of this plea, and whilst it's not perfect justice, at least it's some kind of justice. And some of these things, especially as it pertains to CSA, doesn't even get this far, you know? And if she had the evidence to support that obviously these in-person encounters had taken place, if you don't believe for 1 second that they would not have extended the harshest levels of the law to this man, they would have. But it's just unfortunate that she doesn't have the evidence to support that. You can choose to believe her, you can choose to call her a liar. It really doesn't matter. Even if she was a liar, even if she had bad intentions, even if she was the worst person in the whole entire world, the fact is Drake Bell engaged, as they recall it, in sexual natured conversations with a minor between the ages of 12 and 15. Period. Okay, so with that being said, you're thinking to yourself, hopefully, okay, so what about all of the other stories, right? That she'd lied. How do we know that she lied? If the case is under seal, if this is the only material we have as an audience, as viewers, where did the people get the idea that she lied about the whole thing? Well, it was in Drake's PR cleanup of this whole entire situation. So after the hearing, what ended up happening was Drake kind of fell off. We didn't really hear much from him. He did do a public statement in which he said, you know, the trial's over, I'm just getting back to living my life, yada, 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 yada.
He pleaded guilty to felony attempted child endangerment and a misdemeanor charge of disseminating matter harmful to juveniles. So let's just say all the claims were false. Everything they ever said about Drake Bell were false. Why would he plead guilty? I mean, I guess I could have offered him some kind of deal. But, like, that's a hard thing to refute. Because he literally pleaded guilty to felony attempted child endangerment and disseminating matter harmful to juveniles. Bell's attorney, Ian, said that there was no explicit photos or sexual conduct, and the inappropriate conduct that did occur were reflected in the charges Bell pled guilty to last month. Those charges were felony child endangerment and disseminating harmful material for juveniles.
But he also did sit down and do a podcast with, I do believe, a Mexican podcast show, in which he spews a lot of the talking points it is that we saw from the girl on TikTok that we watched a little bit earlier, as to how she lied about the case and all of that kind of stuff. Because as we can see here, the only people who are saying that this person lied is the defendant's attorney and the defendant himself. Nobody else. So we're just taking the word of the guy who is hired to defend Drake Bell and Drake Bell himself. So let's take a quick look at what it is that Drake Bell said in this podcast interview that has now been the normalized version as to what took place between Drake Bell and this minor. And just think to yourself about how it is that he chooses his words, his vocabulary, his verbiage, shall we?
It was so construed and taken out of context, and things were left out when it was being reported, when things were being reported, and it created a complete narrative that is absolutely not the case, not true. I had found myself in some hot water when I was, being stupid and responded to somebody who had created a Finsta, like a fake Instagram, and were sending me, messages, and I had responded, and it got to a certain point, and then I had realized, oh my gosh, like I think this is, not entirely what it seems or what they presented it as, and I I stopped communicating with them because I found out, okay, I think this person's not who this isn't the case. And I stopped.
Then they're not what? A child, Drake?
Stopped communicating. That sent that person into a total tailspin. They ended up, going after my wife and going after, telling me, threatening me and doing all of these things. And so I had ended up getting in a little bit of trouble because of these text messages. But that's all it was. It was just just some text messages. And well, when you go and you look me up,
Text messages that were sexual in nature with a minor.
and you see the reports, I mean, it's like I was sending nudes and I was getting inappropriate pictures, and I was physical with this person at a concert, or that person at a concert, or I did this and that. And
because those were the allegations it was that she put forward. So a lot of these news outlets were reporting the allegations it was that the young lady had put forward that we all just watched. So he doesn't like the fact that people are reporting on the allegations as well as the things it is that he has admitted to, the crimes it is that he pled to.
none of that was the case, and it was all investigated in my case, through witnesses and for digital forensics. They'd taken my phones and subpoenaed my Instagrams and social media and all that, and everything that was said came up false. Came up. There was no proof of any of that in there, which there would have been. I mean, if there's it's digital forensics. Like if it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. You can't even delete. I mean, if you try to delete it, they're gonna find what they need to find. And then luckily for any of the physical stuff that happened in the concert, I had so many witnesses that came out, that not even on my side, but on the accuser's side, where they were like, what are you talking? We were there the whole time. This didn't occur. They were never here alone. This didn't occur. And so none of that, moved forward as far as charges or anything. All that could move forward was that, I was stupid and responded to some text messages. And that's what I essentially ended up getting charged with.
Yeah.
But if you go and you read anything, I mean, it wasn't even an assault case. My case wasn't even there was no sexual assault, no assault, no physical anything in any of the charges and any of the what I had to go through. But if you go and look me up, it's like Drake Bell charged with sexual assault. Drake Bell has to register as a sex offender. I'm like, it wasn't even a sex case.
Yeah. And
it wasn't even an assault case. It had nothing to do with that.
And it's frustrating that you can't do anything about fake news. Like there's no way you can retaliate.
No, what am I going to do? Go sue in some publication, and then a few days later they write an article, bashing me, and then at the very end they're like, oh, by the way, we fixed a couple of the things. I mean, nobody reads that. They just read the first headline, then they're done. After I was sentenced for what I went.
I also want you guys to put a little bit of focus as to how he is being so severely affected by the articles that are coming out about him. Now, I will say in Drake's defense that there were some articles that I found in my research where they were saying that, like, oh, he moved over to Mexico and ran away from his charges. It does seem that some of these allegations were completely unsubstantiated. So I do understand where Drake's coming from with the idea that some of the stuff that was being said by these, blogs and news outlets and stuff was completely wrong. But at the same time, I mean, that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And especially when you do crimes like this, it allows people to think the worst of you. And that's kind of, the double-edged sword of playing with this kind of fucking fire, quite frankly. But just lock in your mind how invested he is in the idea that every time you search his name, this is all that you see.
Through, there were headlines saying that, Drake Bell is going to have to register as a sex offender in California. I mean, it wasn't even a sex case. I hate talking like this, but that wasn't what happened.
Yeah.
And that wasn't why I was there. And that's not why I, and the reason I pled guilty to even the charges that I was charged with was because my attorney looked at me and said, look, I'd already spent, so much money on representation and investigation and all this stuff just to defend myself. And they said, well, now look, this is what a trial is going to look like. You're going to go, it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks. My wife and I just had a son. So they're like, your son's going to be sitting behind you watching this happen, and the media is going to twist it any way they want. That's going to make it the most clickable as possible. And it's going to be every day. People are going to be watching what's happening every day. And anybody is going to be able to say anything they want on the stand, whether it's true or not. And unfortunately, we see guilty people walk away and innocent people go to jail every day.
Yeah.
And I just looked at them and I was like, what? Well, what's the other option? Said the other option is you take responsibility for this here and what you did here. You take responsibility for that, and we charge you. You'll get probation, community service, and you won't miss a day in California with your son. And I said, I'll take the one where I don't miss a day in California with my son. And so that's why I pleaded guilty. But now it goes over. Drake Bell pleads guilty. It's like, no, I was presented with two options. You would have done the same thing, and then it says pled guilty to sexual assault, and it's like, none of that's true. None of that is remotely true, and unfortunately, it's put a huge stain on everything that I've worked for and everything that I've been doing.
Okay, so now with all of this knowledge, with everything it is that we know as it pertains to the Drake Bell case, let's just go over a couple of fundamental facts. Number one, Drake Bell's case never went to trial. He took a plea deal in which he would end up pleading guilty to attempted child endangerment and dissemination of harmful material to juveniles, right? Those are the two things it is that he pled guilty to. Number two, the conversations it is that he had with the minor was sexual in nature. Number three, in the trial, it is said that age was discussed at some point throughout the conversations as they were unable to lie under oath. This is by Drake's attorney. There is no indication that the young lady had lied about anything at all because unfortunately there was no evidence to corroborate any of the claims. A lack of evidence in a CSA case does not mean that the situation did not take place. It simply means that there is no evidence to back it up. It would be the same in any other case. No evidence, no claim. The only people who had claimed that the young lady had lied was the defense attorney and Drake Bell himself, but not even the judge in this case denied the allegations, just said that they could not support the allegations in this case because they were at a plea hearing. Now again, the case is sealed. All we know is what happened at the plea hearing. All of the documentation that we are able to find online is in regards to the plea hearing for Cleveland, Ohio. There is no further information that we, the general public, would be able to obtain in this. Therefore, anyone who is spewing this kind of information is purely simply choosing to believe Drake over the victim, because also Drake has absolutely nothing to substantiate any of his claims either. The only way that he can substantiate a lie is by lack of evidence, but that does not necessarily constitute a lie. I mean, on numerous occasions, cases have been revisited due to new information and evidence being found. And I will say again in today's video for the umpteenth time, whether you believe the victim, whether you don't, whether you think she's telling the truth, whether you don't, whether you think that she's a liar, she's a harlot, she's a temptress, or whatever it is that your feelings are towards the young lady who gave her story, it really does not matter. The fact of the situation is that Drake Bell, as a grown adult man, sent sexual in nature conversations to a minor. I think for a lot of us who have been CSA victims, we can also resonate with the idea that nobody believed us, that people thought that we were lying, that we ourselves were overtly sexual in nature, therefore tempted the other person to do this, that, and the third. I mean, these are huge talking points for people who have suffered with CSA. So it's wild to me to watch the entire world essentially do exactly the same to somebody who was far too underage to be able to have the cognitive ability to be able to really understand the gravity of what was taking place, whether it was text messages alone. So when I see people saying things like Drake Bell is innocent, stop spreading misinformation, whilst in tandem spreading misinformation, it makes me angry because it allows people to believe that if you don't have evidence, there is absolutely no point in coming forward because you will be ridiculed. But the point is, if you are watching this and you are a victim of CSA and you're thinking to yourself, maybe I'm going to come forward with my story, I don't have enough evidence, is anyone going to believe me? Evidence grows in the number of voices voices that have the same allegations towards the situation. Now, you guys might not be aware of this, but some time ago, I'm going to say about a year and a half ago, I was in a BBC documentary in regards to some CSA it was that I experienced at the hands of Tim Westwood, who is a huge radio DJ over here in the United Kingdom. Now, at the time when allegations were swirling around about Tim Westwood, there was only a few voices. And then there was more black women who were coming forward telling their story. And then there was more, and there was more, and then there was more. And then I finally found the energy to say, no, I'm going to put a face to this and show what the victims of Tim Westwood look like. You know what I mean? And I sat down and I spoke with the BBC and told my story. Now, whilst at this very moment in time, Tim Westwood has not been criminally convicted on the crimes it is that he is alleged to have done by numerous other people, including myself. The point is that now that there are so many voices, people believe the victims, because we all can't be coming from all these various parts in the world having the exact same story, the exact same experiences, the exact same recollections of this one human being. So there's volume in numbers. So if we're going to talk about volume in numbers, let's talk about Drake Bell's ex-girlfriend. So here we have an article to do with Melissa Langfeld. Melissa Langfeld is the ex-girlfriend of Drake Bell. So let's go through the article and we'll discuss some of the topics involved. Actor Drake Bell's ex-girlfriend Melissa Langfeld posted a TikTok video a few years back in which she accused Bell of physically and verbally abusing her during the time of their relationship. She also brought up allegations from other women that he preyed on and sexually harassed underage girls. Langfeld is a 34-year-old singer and actress, posted a TikTok video in 2020 in which she detailed the abuse that she allegedly suffered at the hands of Drake and Josh Actor during their 2-year relationship starting in 2006. She also explained that she and Bell started dating when she was 16 years old and was homeschooled. What was Melissa Langfeld's accusation against Drake Bell? While posting threads on TikTok videos, Melissa Langfeld, who was in a relationship with Bell when she was 16 and he was 20, shared during her time with Bell, she was emotionally and physically abused. I don't even want to get into the underage girls thing, she concluded in her since deleted TikTok. I mean, I will, but I'm scared. Sharing screenshots of texts from those who had seen Bell involved in abusive behaviors. Langfeld also showed messages from other people who stated that the Nickelodeon performer had committed acts of sexual, rude behavior and assault against them. Some of them were underage at the time, as per the rap. I met Drake in early 2007 when I was 16. Read one anonymous message reposted in Langfeld's account. He was dating Melissa Langfeld at the time. Didn't stop him from fucking my 15-year-old friend who was a virgin. 3 years back in an exclusive interview with the Daily Beast, Langfeld said, "What he's being arrested for right now is a prime example of what I would witness. Him having inappropriate conversations online with underage girls," she said, claiming that she had seen him exchanging emails with extremely young girls. "I saw really questionable, crazy shit on his computer. The stuff that he'd be looking at was fucking insane. I don't pray that people will come forward," she added. "I just know that they will." Meanwhile, Bell has denied allegations of verbal and physical abuse made by the ex-girlfriend Langfeld. Drake Bell denies allegations from Sarah Langfeld. After the allegations were shared on TikTok, Drake Bell came forward and denied the allegations against him, saying that he never abused his ex-girlfriends. "I never abused my ex-girlfriend, nor did many of the other things that Melissa falsely claimed in her TikTok video," Bell said in a statement. "As our relationship ended more than a decade ago, we unfortunately called each other terrible names, as often happens when couples are breaking up, but that's it. He then added, clearly, Melissa still felt close enough to me just last year that she was comfortable reaching out to me, asking me to provide her with financial support during a tough time, which I did. I do not know if today's behavior is some kind of misguided quest for more money or attention, but I cannot and I will not allow for these offensive and defamatory allegations to go unchallenged as I am reviewing my legal options.
First, I would like to start out with saying that I don't really care if anyone believes me, as this is my story in my life and something that I went through. It wasn't until recently that I actually realized that abuse isn't something that all women have to go through. When I started dating Drake, I was 16. I was homeschooled. I moved in with him. I was singing. It wasn't until about a year when the verbal abuse started. And when I say verbal abuse, imagine the worst type of verbal abuse you could ever imagine, and that was what I got. It then turned into physical, hitting, throwing, everything. At the pinnacle of it, he dragged me down the stairs of our house in Los Feliz. My face hit every step on the way down. I have photos of this. I don't even want to get into the underage girls thing. I mean, I will, but I'm scared.
Okay, so here is one of the messages. Drake's wife's best friend just tried to message me to discredit my story by saying that she's changed and it was a long time ago. I feel bad for his wife, as just a few months ago he was DMing me trying to flirt. Response, I'm so proud of you. He has a wife. I also feel bad for her. I remember you telling me about everything you mentioned in those videos. I remember the pics. I remember the physical fights. I remember him throwing you in a bathtub, scolding you with water. I remember him breaking all your antiques. And I also remember calling the cops on him and having to stay at Molly's house until shit fizzled over. I'm proud of you for coming out with your story. So this is somebody corroborating her claims. This is what somebody had responded to her saying in a DM. The person said, I met Drake in early 2007 when I was 16. He was dating you at the time. Didn't stop him from effing my 15-year-old friend who was still a virgin. I believe you and I'm so sorry for what you endured and what my friend has endured, because that was statutory rape. Fuck anyone who's discounting your story. We know the truth. I'm guessing a lot more women will stand up against him. I guess that's what it's saying. Here's another one. Hi there. Thank you for speaking out about Drake Bell. I can personally confirm that he had sex with a friend of mine who was 15 years old when he was 20. I sent him this message 2 years ago. I remember you speaking to my friend on the phone after it happened and you told her that he choked you and spit in your face. This was in 2006. She said, I dated him from August 2006 to February 2009. This is the girl he cheated on me with and took her virginity, right? Here's another person who came forward who said, here goes nothing. A couple of years ago, Drake was performing at a benefit concert at my high school. Back then, I was in 8th grade. The entire concert, Drake wasn't who you would expect him to be like. After the concert, all I remember is that I met Drake and he raped me. I was in fucking 8th grade. This guy that I had idolized as a kid was a rapist. He was a fucking sicko. Okay, so what else do we know? Well, we now know that Melissa Lingfield, his ex-girlfriend who he dated from 2006 to 2009, alleges that she suffered domestic abuse at the hands of him. She also alleges that she saw some things that were inappropriate as it pertains to sexual conversations with minors. Then, as a result of her having this conversation on TikTok on a public platform, I will say, which she subsequently has deleted, then a plethora of other individuals came forward to share their stories about how Drake Bell had allegedly abused them in some kind of way, some people even alleging that he raped them. So at what point does it get to a James Charles level of allegations when there are just too many? So we saw 4 different women making this allegation, Melissa Lingfield making allegations, as well as the person who actually got a case taken all the way to court. So we're talking 6 potential victims. At what point do we start listening to the victims and not discrediting them? And again, like I said at the very beginning of this story, this is not to discredit Drake Bell as a victim of CSA. He is just as much of a victim of CSA as anybody else. But that also doesn't mean that it gives us the liberty to discredit every other person who has been involved around Drake and who has allegations against Drake and who are alleging themselves that they have also been the victims of Drake. So then where this situation gets even wilder and even more crazy for me is when I hopped online and somebody who was a part of the documentary ended up just deleting prior content in regards to Drake Bell. A content creator by the name of Alexa Nicholas, who was featured throughout the entire Quiet on Set documentary. She has been a huge advocate when it comes to children who are SA survivors, as well as just SA survivors in general. If you don't know who she is, you will know her for her role on Zoe 101. She was known as Nicole Brislow from 2005 to 2006, directly after the second season. She and Jamie Lynn Spears fought a lot, especially throughout the Free Britney movement and the case surrounding that, of which Alexa was a huge advocate for, so much so that Britney Spears actually did confront her about how she was treating her sister. So let me tell you something. When I publicly confronted Alexa Nicholas about deleting her previous video in regards to Drake Bell and the case it was that Drake Bell was involved in, I was so surprised at how many people came to my DMs to tell me that they too were victims of Alexa Nicholas. Now, I am not here to go into her allegations today. I might revisit it at some point, but I do find it extremely strange that somebody who holds quite huge space in the advocacy world for CSA and for child labor laws, etc., would have so many people wanting to speak to me in order for me to share their stories of abuse against her. That's what they're alleging. Now, I'm not here to sit here and character assassinate this person. I understand that she has been through a lot as it pertains to Nickelodeon, but it is important to at least acknowledge that, because I don't want to not acknowledge the voices of potential victims. But it also is important to acknowledge that as it pertains to her collective, which is Eat Predators. She founded the Eat Predators collective in 2022, and their first direct action was against the artist Diplo, who had numerous different sexual assault allegations against him. Diplo ended up playing in front of a Eat the Rich banner, which then subsequently became the name of Eat Predators. That's where it came from. Eat Predators movement was essentially created as a support collective group environment for victims of SA, and was initially created to support and protect members of the entertainment industry who had suffered CSA and SA. Now, it's also important to note that there are numerous allegations of SA within the entertainment industry that Alexa alleges without any verified proof. In July of 2023, she accused star Jonah Hill of forcibly kissing her in 2008. That was around the time that he was being cancelled, I believe. In 2023, in July, Nicholas accused Seth MacFarlane of making inappropriate comments to her, touching her inappropriately and trying to kiss her without consent when she was a voice actor for Family Guy. And in September 2023, Nicholas accused actor Joe Jonas of asking for her nude photos when they were both teenagers. Now, why am I bringing that up? I'm not bringing it up to discredit any of these allegations. These allegations may well be true. However, what I will say is, just like the case it was that we just listened to as it pertains to Drake Bell, these are unfounded. These are allegations with no real tangible proof. These are allegations that actually have never made its way into the judicial system at all. But the point is that regardless of whether they've made it there or not, I am making the active choice to believe her, because I'm of the perspective of believe all victims until they give you reason not to believe them. Believe all victims and also scrutinize them. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being critical and vigilant, because unfortunately, as we've seen with many cases over the past couple of years, there are people out there who are more than willing to lie. But somebody has to give me 100% reason not to believe the claims it is that they are making. And there is nothing here that is leading me to believe that I don't believe these claims. So what am I going to do? I'm going to hold it in the air. I'm going to allow it to create space so that if any other victims of these alleged abuses and attacks come forward, then at least we know there was more than one. And I feel like that's the right thing to do in these kind of situations, as it is such a delicate situation. So going back to this message, she posted, "Today, Alexa Nicholas exposes Drake Bell." And here is the link from that video. This was posted on the 12th of October 2023. And if we click the link, the video is no longer available. So then I responded to this message from 2023 of the deleted video as it pertains to the case. And I said, you know, the internet is forever, right? You can't just privatize a video because the perpetrator of the crime that you rightfully called out in October 2023 is now gaining popularity due to a documentary. So it's eat predators unless they can help you increase your own visibility. Because at that time, people started pointing out that Alexa had been going through all of Drake Bell's social medias and Instagrams and stuff and liking every photograph, which was a glaringly different response to the response it is that she had when she heard the allegations for the first time.
When I was 15, I noticed a huge shift.
He's laughing, looking at her like he has no idea what she's talking about. This is ridiculous. Dude, NBC News is literally saying, not even alleged here, Drake Bell victim. Victim, Drake Bell, gives emotional court statement. Emotional. This is horrific to hear a child talking like this, that this happened to her. And you're literally smirking, acting like you have no idea what she's talking about. Dude, shame on you, man. Alleged, whatever, this is my opinion. Like, shame on you, dude. Emotional court statement. And the only person who's not fucking emotional is the person who pleaded guilty. I'm going to say it one more time with the entire screen for Drake Bell. Emotional statement. Court statement. And the only person who's not emotional is the person who pleaded guilty. Instead, that person is smirking. Smirking.
Now, I'm not saying that people's opinions can't change. Everybody's opinions is subject to change. But especially when we're dealing with something such as CSA, I feel like it's important for you to at least speak to your audience about it, especially if that is exactly what you have built your platform off. You have built the platform that you have off talking about predators. Eat Predators as a collective is literally there for exactly that, for the support of these victims. So it makes me question, where is this victim's support? Do they hold space with you anymore? Now, I will say a couple of days ago, Alexa did subsequently respond because a lot of people were saying, why did you delete the video? Like, this is really weird. This is, you know, kind of sus considering. I mean, you can probably see some of the comments that are showing here. This is what she said. She said, for those asking about my private video, I now have every single report and all documents pertaining to the case. I will be going over each piece over the next few weeks and then going to revisit via streaming. I'm choosing to read diligently before I break it all down. These are hundreds of documents from the Cleveland police and court, not from a person. These are witness transcripts and submitted evidences, etc. I need time to read it all. Obviously, I support all survivors. Now, if you don't know who Christie Carson Romano is, she is the girl, sister in Even Stevens, who is the supporting actress next to Shia LaBeouf. She has a podcast in which she speaks to various different people, especially people who are in the entertainment industry. Alexa did have an episode where she spoke about, you know, her own experiences, Eat Predators, and all of that kind of good stuff. However, a couple of weeks later, Christie also hosted another person called Corey Feldman. Now, if you don't know who Corey Feldman is also another child actor who was in the movie Stand By Me, if I'm not mistaken. And he was pretty much a very well-known child star in the 80s. He has had numerous allegations and has been screaming from the rooftops for years about all of the sexual assault it was that he faced as a minor at the hands of huge executives in Hollywood. He has wrote books about it, he has done documentaries about it, he has done press tours about it. The guy has been talking about it non-stop. So it's unsurprising that he would be on a podcast talking about, again, the sexual assault and the allegations he has against numerous different high-level, top-end people within Hollywood. Now, the problem with this is that Corey Feldman himself, he has his own allegations. There are people who have made allegations against him for sexual assault and abuse and all of those kind of things. So Alexa and Christie ended up getting into like some social media beef, I guess, because Alexa felt as if it was wrong of Christie to platform this person, even though they were a victim who perpetrated crimes or is alleged to have perpetrated crimes against other individuals. She felt that simply platforming him was wrong.
It's all about context and what she stands for when she's not making money. When she's not making money, who is she? How is she showing up in the world? Does she care when it's not trending? No. I'm sad to say, in my own personal opinion today, she sadly proved to me she preferred to make money off of an alleged predator. And so, listen, if I am, here on YouTube, obviously on a show that's called E-Predators, and I am making some dollars doing this work, I better be the same person when I'm not streaming. Otherwise, I personally cannot sleep. I don't want to be that kind of person. I want to use my platform for good.
Now, because Alexa had the backing of her Eat Predators fam, a lot of people started flocking over to Christie and basically saying, how dare you, this is so terrible, why would you platform a predator, yada yada yada. So Christie, in order to stop all of the beef, I'm guessing the worst decision that she could have made, quite frankly, decided to delete Alexa's episode from her podcast. Alexa ended up taking this situation extremely seriously and personally because she felt as if her story as a victim of SA was now being silenced, that the voice of a victim has been silenced due to Christie removing her video. And a lot of people are beginning to bring up that there is a huge similarity in this situation, that the moment that Drake is kind of getting some good press, all of a sudden we're removing the voice of the victim in order to amplify the other one. So it seems as if the same thing it is that she was accusing Christie Carson Romano of doing is exactly the same thing that she's doing right now by hiding this video. Now, you could just say, okay, it could be that, there's more to the case and she's found out there's more to the case and she's looking deeper and she's privatized it while she's doing her investigation. But I would also say, then in tandem, let's halt on Drake Bell discussion until we find out that information, because clearly from past indications, it's not where your moral compass aligns. Like, doing something like that is not something that you endorse in other people. So I'm just kind of confused as to why you're doing it yourself. So I'm like, if you want to do your investigation and find out more information, I implore anybody to dig a little bit deeper, girl. Agatha Christie is always in the house. But if you're going to ask for people to be patient while you do digging, I just don't think it is then appropriate for you to do the exact same thing you were upset with other people for doing. If she'd have not shown in the past that she was upset with other people for doing that, I wouldn't be upset with this. But it's just showing like a flagrant hypocrisy, especially for somebody whose literal space is there to support survivors of SA. Okay, so essentially this is where we end today's video. I don't want to keep just going over similar topics because I could literally go on about this topic for ages at this point. But what I do want to do is go over some of the key points, okay? Because Agatha Christie, she is in the house. Number one, there is nothing to indicate at this point that the victim of Drake Bell lied about anything. The only people who alleged that she had lied about anything was the defense attorney, which is Drake's defense attorney, and Drake himself. The judge, for the most part, actually did side with the victim. He basically said that some of the stuff it is that she said in regards to in-person interaction with Drake Bell could not be corroborated. Therefore, they would just focus on the plea that was taking place that day. But he also did note that Drake Bell, due to his fame, his celebrity, his accolades, his influence, was able to gain access to a minor and have inappropriate conversations, to which the attorney admitted suspected were sexual in nature. So even if you were to disregard all of the in-person interactions, the fact of the matter is Drake Bell was having inappropriate conversations with a minor, and that is what he pled guilty to. Let's not devalue what that was, because had that have been any other person, we would be treating it with so much more vim. The court case is sealed. Nobody knows and nobody is aware of the finite details involved in the case. The forensic reports that were supposedly have taken place, the digital forensic reports, these are all things that Drake has said. These aren't all things that we know to be fact or know to be truthful at all. And should Alexa Nicholas come forward with more information than, the majority of us have access to, and there is mountains of evidence to suggest that this young lady had been lying throughout the whole thing, because let's not forget, these things can happen, people can lie, I will concede. But what I will say is that I am not a person who's here to attack people or perpetrators or victims or whatever, or eat predators, girl. I am here simply to hold space for victims to share their voice. So in the same way that we are now holding space for Drake Bell to tell his story about how he was sexually abused by Brian Peck, as he rightfully and deservedly should, share with the world exactly what kind of monster that man is, and we're holding space to hear his story. We need to also hold space in tandem for the people who also have allegations against Drake Bell. But my other thing is that how many people need to have similar stories before we start taking them seriously? Because with Drake Bell, he has 6. With my situation and Tim Westwood, he has 8. So how many times do people need to say the same stories, similar outcomes, similar rhetoric from all different corners of the world, all different parts of the globe, for people to start saying, hold on, something seems fishy here? What I am imploring for people to do is to have hyper vigilance, to understand that the victims can also be perpetrators, and it is not wholly uncommon. It is a minority of people who are victims of CSA who go on to be perpetrators, but it's not totally uncommon, because certain behaviors and certain aspects of their lives have become so normalized that, the morality of what's right and what's wrong can sometimes slip some people. It doesn't in any way make it okay, but it does mean that we need to hold all of these things accountable in equal measure. And that's all that I'm asking for the audience, is to equally yoke this situation, that Drake Bell can be a victim of horrendous CSA crimes, but also be the perpetrator of things he admitted to and pleaded guilty to, which is attempted child endangerment and the dissemination of harmful materials to juveniles. So hold space for Drake as a victim, but also hold space for Drake as the perpetrator of crimes that he has admitted to. Anyway, that is about it from me. This has been a really, really long story, and it has been emotionally taxing. It's been very difficult to hear a lot of this stuff. The only thing I do want to say is to Drake Bell's victim, I hear you. I'm holding space for you, and I think that you're tremendously courageous for being 19 years old, being so young, so incredibly young, and fighting the forces that be. Even with the lack of evidence, I hope that this shows other people that there is people out there who will hold space for you and to hold space for your voice. And I think that by you doing that, that you have done something that I think so many people have never been able to do, and I think that is courageous and amazing. So, I wish you nothing but the best, and I hope that you're finding healing, and I hope that you and your family are able to move past this and prosper and all of that good stuff. In terms of Drake Bell, it is what it is. I mean, I feel sorry for him, but I can't hold that much, anything, because it's hard for me, because I'm like, but you did this, and that's hard for me to look past on a personal level. In terms of everything else, I don't really have anything else to add. Just follow my things in the description box down below. Thank you to the sponsor of today's video. It's kind of a heavy topic. And with that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing day or evening, whatever it is you're doing, but I'm super tired and I will see you soon. I've been filming for like, God, how long has it been? I've been filming for like 3.5 hours. This is a long time, okay? I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and until next time, you beautiful, amazing, badass bitches, it's been Paige. Bye.